Section 90 of Reviews by Oscar Wilde. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lizzie Driver. Reviews by Oscar Wilde. Edited by Robert Ross. Section 90. Ouida's New Novel. Pall Mall Gazette, May 17th, 1889. Ouida is the last of the Romantics. She belongs to the school of Bulwer Lytton and George Sand, though she may lack the learning of the one and the sincerity of the other. She tries to make passion, imagination, and poetry part of fiction. She still believes in heroes and in heroines. She is florid and fervent and fanciful. Yet even she, the high priestess of the impossible, is affected by her age. Her last book, Gilderoy as she calls it, is an elaborate psychological study of modern temperaments. For her it is realistic, and she has certainly caught much of the tone and temper of the society of our day. Her people move with ease and grace and indolence. The book may be described as a study of the peerage from a poetical point of view. Those who are tired of mediocre young curates who have doubts, of serious young ladies who have missions, and of the ordinary figureheads of most of the English fiction of our time, might turn with pleasure, if not with profit, to this amazing romance. It is a resplendent picture of our aristocracy. No expense has been spared in gilding. For the comparatively small sum of £1 11 shillings and sixpence, one is introduced to the best society. The central figures are exaggerated, but the background is admirable. In spite of everything, it gives one a sense of something like life. What is the story? Well, we must admit that we have a faint suspicion that Ouida has told it to us before. Lord Gilderoy, whose name was as old as the days of Nut, falls madly in love, or fancies that he falls madly in love, with a rustic Perdita, a provincial Artemis who has a Gainsborough face, with wide open questioning eyes, and tumbled auburn hair. She is poor but well born, being the only child of Mr. Vernon of Larnath, a curious recluse, who is half a pedant and half Don Quixote. Gilderoy marries her, and, tiring of her shyness, her lack of power to express herself, her want of knowledge of fashionable life, returns to an old passion for a wonderful creature called the Duchess of Soria. Lord Gilderoy becomes ice, the Duchess becomes fire. At the end of the book Gilderoy is a pitiable object. He has to submit to be forgiven by one woman, and to endure to be forgotten by the other. He is thoroughly weak, thoroughly worthless, and the most fascinating person in the whole story. Then there is his sister, Lady Sunbury, who is very anxious for Gilderoy to marry, and is quite determined to hate his wife. She is really a capital sketch. Ouida describes her as one of those admirably virtuous women who are more likely to turn men away from the paths of virtue than the wickedest of sirens. She irritates herself, alienates her children, and infuriates her husband. You are perfectly right. I know you are always right. I admit you are. But it is just that which makes you so damnably odious, said Lord Sunbury once in a burst of rage, in his town-house, speaking in such stentorian tones that the people passing up Grosvenor Street looked up at his open windows, and a crossing sweeper said to a match-seller, "My eye, ain't he giving it to the old gal like blazes?" The noblest character in the book is Lord Aubrey. As he is not a genius, he, naturally, behaves admirably on every occasion. He begins by pitying the neglected Lady Gilderoy, and ends by loving her. But he makes the great renunciation with considerable effect, and having induced Lady Gilderoy to receive back her husband, he accepts a distant and arduous viceroyalty. He is Ouida's ideal of the true politician, for Ouida has apparently taken to the study of English politics, A great deal of her book is devoted to political disquisitions. She believes that the proper rulers of a country like ours are the aristocrats. Oligarchy has great fascination for her. She thinks meanly of the people and adores the House of Lords and Lord Salisbury. Here are some of her views. We will not call them ideas. The House of Lords wants nothing of the nation, and therefore it is the only candid and disinterested guardian of the people's needs and resources. It has never withstood the real desire of the country. It has only stood between the country and its impetuous and evanescent follies. A democracy cannot understand honour. How should it? The caucus is chiefly made up of men who sand their sugar, put alum in their bread, forge bayonets and girders which bend like willow wands, send bad calico to India, and insure vessels at Lloyd's which they know will go to the bottom before they have been 10 days at sea. Lord Salisbury has often been accused of arrogance. People have never seen that what they mistook for arrogance was the natural, candid consciousness of a great noble that he is more capable of leading the country than most men composing it would be. Democracy, after having made everything supremely hideous and uncomfortable for everybody, always ends by clinging to the coat-tails of some successful general. The prosperous politician may be honest, but his honesty is at best a questionable quality. The moment that a thing is a métier, it is wholly absurd to talk about any disinterestedness in the pursuit of it. To the professional politician, national affairs are a manufacture into which he puts his audacity and his time, and out of which he expects to make so much percentage for his lifetime. There is too great a tendency to govern the world by noise. Ouida's aphorisms on women, love, and modern society are somewhat more characteristic. Women speak as though the heart were to be treated at will like a stone or a bath. Half the passions of men die early, because they are expected to be eternal. It is the folly of life that lends charm to it. What is the cause of half the misery of women? That their love is so much more tenacious than the man's. It grows stronger as his grows weaker. To endure the country in England for long, one must have the rusticity of Wordsworth's mind, and boots and stockings as homely. It is because men feel the necessity to explain that they drop into the habit of saying what is not true. Love can make its own world in a solitude adieu, but marriage cannot. Normally monogamous, all cultured society is polygamous, often even polyandrous. Moralists say that a soul should resist passion. They might as well say that a house should resist an earthquake. The whole world is just now on its knees before the poorer classes. All the cardinal virtues are taken for granted in them, and it is only property of any kind which is the sinner. Men are not merciful to women's tears as a rule, and when it is a woman belonging to them who weeps, they only go out and slam the door behind them. Men always consider women unjust to them, when they fail to defy their weaknesses. No passion once broken will ever bear renewal. Feeling loses its force and its delicacy if we put it under the microscope too often. Anything which is not flattery seems injustice to a woman. When society is aware that you think it is a flock of geese, it revenges itself by hissing loudly behind your back. Of descriptions of scenery and art we have, of course, a large number, and it is impossible not to recognize the touch of the real Ouida manner in the following. It was an old palace, lofty, spacious, magnificent, and dull. Busts of dusky yellow marble, weird bronzes stretching out gaunt arms into the darkness, ivories brown with age, worn brocades with gold threads gleaming in them, and tapestries with strange and pallid figures of dead gods, were all half revealed and half obscured in the twilight. As he moved through them, a figure which looked almost as pale as the Adonis of the tapestry, and was erect and motionless like the statue of the wounded love, came before his sight out of the darkness. It was that of Gladys. It is a manner full of exaggeration and over-emphasis, but with some remarkable rhetorical qualities and a good deal of colour. Ouida is fond of airing a smattering of culture, but she has a certain intrinsic insight into things, and, though she is rarely true, she is never dull. Gilderoy, with all its faults, which are great, and its absurdities, which are greater, is a book to be read. Gilderoy, by Ouida. Chatto and Windus. End of Section 90. Ouida's new novel.